Okay, so hey guys, this is my final course project policy report for ECON 305. Today's date is December 18th. I am Joanna Bishop. I do have a cold flu thing that I've had for like a week now, so you have to excuse my voice, but I'm going to get through this. So here we go. Describe the climate justice hawks. Those were my IAP group that I got because of my last name. So climate justice hawks, it's a tongue twister, are an advocacy groups or individuals focused on addressing climate change through the lens of justice and equity. Their main concerns are ensuring that the vulnerable populations are not disproportionately affected by climate policies, and that these policies promote fairness and inclusivity. They aim to integrate social justice into climate action, emphasizing the need for equitable distribution of resources and opportunities. And in the context of sustainable development, they play a crucial role by highlighting the intersection between environmental sustainability and social equity. They advocate for policies that not only mitigate climate change, but also address historical injustices and empower marginalized communities. The people that, have no voice, right? So I think it's a really cool thing. This approach ensures that sustainable development efforts are comprehensively inclusive, fostering resilience and adaptability in all sectors of society. So move on to my next slide here. The climate justice hawks focus, the specific climate justice hawks I focused on, I did some research on, are primarily active in developing and emerging economies where socioeconomic disparities are more pronounced, so making that gap less. These regions often face significant environmental challenges such as deforestation, pollution, and extreme weather events, which exacerbate existing inequalities, right? The key socioeconomic characteristics include high poverty rates, limited access to education and healthcare, and reliance on agriculture and natural resources, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? But when the climate's changing and you don't have those resources as readily available, or are not able to produce what you once could, then it really does affect you. And these areas are typically classified as developing or emerging, with specific challenges like inadequate infrastructure, political instability, and economic dependency on fossil fuels. However, they also present opportunities for sustainable development, such as harnessing renewable energy, promoting sustainable agriculture, and leveraging indigenous knowledge systems. So, things that have worked for hundreds of thousands of years for the indigenous people that we definitely could learn something from, right? So overall, climate justice hawks are vital in advocating for a just transition to a sustainable future, ensuring that no one is left behind in the light against climate change. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, my dog is being a butthead. So their work underscores the importance of integrating social justice into environmental policies, ultimately contributing to a more equitable and sustainable world. So this is my data analysis and simulation outcomes. And I have migrants, refugees, societies because, those are typically the crowd that the climate justice hawks will fight for. So these are my two resources here at the top. This is a chart underneath here that shows you the total population living in extreme poverty by world regions. Latin America and the Caribbean being the most poor, the most extreme poverty, and sub-Saharan Africa being kind of on the lower, but these are the top countries, regions that live in extreme poverty. And then this next slide here, this is the 20-year period data that I collected from the World Bank regarding global poverty and inequality. So did you know that 692 million people live below the $2.15 per day poverty line as of 2024. So as of this current year, that's how many people live below the poverty line. They live with less than $2 a day. So in 2020, COVID increased that global extreme poverty by about 0.85% points to about 9.7%, mainly in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Recovery has been uneven, with low-income countries facing inflationary pressures from the Ukraine conflict war, and now with Russia and China and everything that's been going on in the world. The Middle East, North Africa saw significant poverty regression due to regional fragility. So the PIP revised 69 surveys and added 16 new ones, now covering 170 economies. In 2022, global poverty at $2.15 line is about 9%, with 713 million extremely poor. So it has gone up, but they expect it to drop to 692 million by the end of this year. But still, I mean, that's not a great drop in that rate, So the PIP introduced new methods, measures, including a global prosperity gap to better assess shared prosperity. Then the geography of high inequality. This shows you a little bit of how that side of things from that perspective. So these articles argue that inequality is not inevitable. It can be influenced by policy choices. Policies can target inequality at 3 levels: by acquiring human capital, or by using skills and assets, and finally by fair fiscal policies. So structural inequalities are interconnected and dynamic, affecting intergenerational mobility. A comprehensive approach is needed to reduce inequality and improve socioeconomic mobility. The macroeconomic data highlights the need for climate action to address the disproportionate impact of vulnerable populations. So, I mean, we definitely need to have more information, but it is something that needs to be addressed, and to create, a more I won't say fair world, but to have the gap not be so big between the rich and the poor, because if we continue at this rate, that gap is only going to get bigger, right? So in developing countries, policies focus on reducing carbon emissions and promoting sustainable practices, leading to economic shift towards green industries and reducing inequalities. Like I talked about, we don't want that gap to go bigger. We want it to be smaller. In developing countries, financial and technology support is needed to implement sustainable practices, leading to growth in green sectors and improved health outcomes. And in emerging countries, the focus is on balanced economic growth with environmental sustainability, investing in renewable energy, and ensuring equitable distribution of economic benefits. Environmental conditions are reflected in data on emissions, deforestation, and resource depletion. Policy intervention tested using the En-ROADS simulator include carbon pricing, renewable energy investments, and deforestation reduction. This simulator shows how these interventions can impact sustainable development goals by reducing emissions, improving energy access, and promoting economic growth. A different intervention can affect SDGs by enhancing environmental sustainability, such as reducing poverty and promoting economic development. And the link here to my En-ROADS simulator is right there, if you're interested. And then let's see, so detailed policy recommendations with supporting evidence. Sustainable development aims to balance economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. This presentation proposes policy recommendations based on research and simulation outcomes to promote sustainable development, considering the interests of climate change advocates and the broader community. And these are all the 17 goals, so no poverty, zero hunger, good health, well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable citizens, communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, so the oceans, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and a partnership for the goals. I mean, these are, it's a huge undertaking, but if we want to have the same world we have now, we've got to do something, that's the reality. And if we don't, then I don't know that any of us are going to love the outcome of that in 10, 20 years. It's going to either we let it affect us now and we make changes now, or we're forced to later on, is the way I kind of see it. But here's my policy recommendations: economic dimension, green investment incentives, and you can read through these. I don't want to say who, but the evidence from it. So my recommendation is to implement tax credits for businesses investing in renewable energy and sustainable practices. And for each of these, I put benefits and challenges. You can totally read through those. For time's sake, I'm not going to read all of them to you, but then my other recommendation for circular economy promotion is to develop policies supporting recycling, reuse, and sustainable product design. For social dimension, education and awareness programs, recommendation is to invest in education campaigns about sustainability and climate change. Equitable access to resources, recommendation is to ensure fair distribution of resources and education, so everybody gets the same opportunities. And here's the rest of my recommendations. For environmental dimensions, strengthening environmental regulations. My recommendations are to enforce stricter emission standards and penalties for noncompliance, and for conservation and restoration initiatives. My recommendation is to expand protected areas and invest in habitat restoration projects. And again, you can read through the benefits, challenges, and the evidence for all of those. Implementing these policy recommendations can significantly advance sustainable growth, integrating economic growth, social equity, and environmental stewardship. While challenges exist, the potential benefits for climate change hawks and the broader community are substantial, fostering a resilient and sustainable future, which I think is what we can all agree we would really like. And here's my conclusions and reflections. So here's the key points from climate justice hawks, but also sustainable development. Significant findings: carbon pricing. It's effective in reducing emissions and producing green innovation, while the potential GDP growth, while providing potential GDP growth through reinvestment. Renewable energy investment, creating jobs and enhancing energy security through initial costs are high, but in the long run, it does pay out. And I think the long-term reward for it definitely outweighs the immediate high cost. Sustainable agriculture reduces emissions and improves food security, requiring support for farmer transitions. Green urban planning improves air quality and public health, despite land use and funding challenges. And education programs increase public support for climate policies, fostering a culture of sustainability. So my recommendations are to implement carbon pricing to incentivize emission reductions, to invest in renewable energy infrastructure for long-term benefits, to promote sustainable agriculture practices, to enhance food security, to develop green urban spaces to improve living conditions, and to launch education and awareness programs to empower communities. These strategies address economic, social, and environmental dimensions crucial for achieving sustainable developmental goals. They align with climate justice principles by ensuring equitable transitions and community benefits. By integrating these policies, we can drive meaningful progress toward a sustainable future, balancing growth with environmental stewardship and social equity. And so that's my presentation. So here's my references, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.